Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Being Patient Perspectives. I'm Deborah Kahn, founder of Being Patient. So these are some of my favorite interviews because we get to hear from people who have a dementia diagnosis. Today we're interviewing Phyllis Fehr, and she is a former ICU nurse who's based in Canada and was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 53 years old. So Phyllis, thank you so much for joining us, and it's wonderful to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I think this is really a great opportunity to share and help others to learn.
Sorry, I have something in my throat just as I talked. So can you tell us a little bit? I mean, 53, how many years have you been living with dementia?
Well, it depends on if you go with 53 when I was diagnosed or when I first started seeing symptoms. So I started seeing symptoms when I was 48. I was having a few difficulties, and it was mostly with my executive functioning. So multitasking, reading, writing things on paper. And I started to see, some difficulties when I was trying to do my charting and that type of thing. But if you need to know the whole story, my dementia journey actually started when I was 13 because I had a grandmother with dementia that I helped care for, and then my own mother. So when I talk about my dementia journey, it's been a long one. But
So you have.
really, I was 48 when I started seeing symptoms, 53 by the time I got a firm diagnosis.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to the familial history of Alzheimer's in your family, but what I really want to understand though is specifically when you say something was going on at 48, what specifically did you notice that was not in your norm?
So I can't say for sure exactly what was happening. So I was the type of person, I never wrote anything down, and now I was having to make myself notes. I never used a calendar, and I started to have to use a calendar. Um, you know, when I was at work, you do your patient assessment, you go out and you chart it. Well, it was starting to take me longer and longer to chart and that type of thing. And I thought, something's just not right. I don't like what's happening. I don't like what I'm feeling. And that's what took me originally to the doctor to say, something's going on.
So the when we talk to other people who have a diagnosis, some people describe it as I was never ADD, but suddenly I couldn't hold my attention or I couldn't multitask. Would you say that was what it was like for you?
Yes. And the other thing was, I had had a medical emergency around the same time. And I used to say, it's almost like my brain is stunned. That's what I felt like my brain was stunned. It's not working right. Something's not right here.
So when you say stunned, I'm really interested in this too, because we've heard this also from other people. Does that mean, you're confronted with like it's almost like your brain freezes, or what does stunned mean when you say that?
So, when you're talking and you're thinking and things just naturally flow. Well, it wasn't flowing anymore. It was like I had to search for what I needed. I had to really make that brain work. Like it wasn't working. It was stunned.
And then I assume like as an ICU nurse, there are certain things that are very procedural in like an examination and recording data about the patient and things. So tell me a little bit about that. When you were at, I mean, it sounds like the first early signs manifested when you were at work, when you said something just wasn't right. What did that look like exactly at work?
So when you go in and you first see your patient, you do a head to toe assessment, and it there's a certain way to chart it, right? So when I'd go out and I'd start to chart, it was like not there. I knew what I had done, I knew what the answers were, but I was having trouble getting it from what was in my brain onto that piece of paper. Um, you know, and I was one of the senior nurses, so everybody always came to me with questions and looking for answers. And I was finding it harder and harder to answer the questions for them. So I really quickly took a leave of absence because I didn't want to make any mistakes.
were you at that time? Okay, so you're around 50, probably like 40,
I was
40,
48 back at
48 then.
that
So
time.
you stopped working around 48, late
Yeah,
40. That's very early, right? And today, in the context of today's world, that's quite early. Um, so what was going through your mind at that time? Were you like, I mean, you obviously, you said you have a mother and a grandmother who had Alzheimer's. So was it like, now's my time, or was Alzheimer's not really on
that
your?
was something that was really front and center in my mind and something I was very concerned about. So when I went to the doctor, they just kind of looked at me and chuckled and went, no, but it might be menopause. It might be depression. It might be stress, you high stress area, all those things. So that was part of the ruling out process that we had to check for all of those things to rule them all out. And then and I will tell you, even after they ruled everything out, he did not send me on to be checked for Alzheimer's. It was okay, it's none of this. So let's just carry on and see what happens. And, I'm not that type of person. I want to know. So I let it go for a couple months. And then I went back to the family doctor and told a white lie and told him my migraines were back, because then I knew he'd send me to the neurologist. And.
Okay, so this is super interesting to me because you're navigating the healthcare system that is basically telling you nothing. I can't tell you how many women who have suspicion that there's something wrong with their memory, especially if they're in their 50s, or almost 50-ish. They're told it's just, don't worry, it's menopause, right? I mean, that happens over and over and over and over again. And we've now heard it like repeatedly. But because you have the benefit of being inside healthcare and you know yourself that, you
Yeah,
probably know doctors sometimes do get it wrong,
we
whereas,
do.
yeah. And so you actually had to strategically manipulate kind of the healthcare system, which I love that. So you're there going, I have migraines when you actually did you have a history of migraines, or did you just
Yeah, I
say,
did. So I
okay?
do have a neurologist that has followed me for years, but I had gone through menopause very early in life. So my migraine stopped after menopause. So when he sent me back to her, and the other saving grace was I used to work with her. So when I went into her office, it was the funniest thing. She looks at me, she goes, your migraines are back? And I went, no, I lied. She goes, what? What's going on? Tell me. And then, she took me very serious. And we have to get to the bottom of this because this is so not you.
So you had not to that point had a cognitive assessment at all?
No.
But did you tell the doctor, "Hey, I want to be assessed. My mom and my grandmother had Alzheimer's," or was that not brought up yet? Was it kind
Oh,
of
yeah, that was brought up. But, they don't, I hate to say this. I think they don't know what they don't know. I think they have certain diseases that they don't want to talk about or even consider because they're not comfortable with it. I can remember being ill and having to go to like the clinic on the weekend. It's not my normal family doctor. And he goes, what's your medical history? As soon as I said I had Alzheimer's, I'll never forget it. He was like, I don't want to hear that. I was like, whatever, just because you're not comfortable with it.
And yeah, it's so interesting to hear this, and especially from your perspective, because you can navigate the healthcare system strategically. So you're in the doctors and you say, okay, this something's not right. Then do you get a cognitive assessment? And how long now are you trying? Like from the time you
Okay,
went.
so this is like year 3
Okay, so
that I
you're on.
finally
This is not like months. This is 3 years later.
get to the neurologist, and she right away sent me off to see a geriatrician. And that was the other thing that I found really interesting was you go off to see the geriatrician. Well, you have to bring a family member. Well, I still didn't feel like I needed anybody with me, but I took somebody. I took my husband. And at the time, he couldn't see a problem with me yet. I could. Some of my friends could. Some of the kids could, but he didn't see anything because, so we went in and she did a quick kind of assessment. She goes, well, you're doing fine. come back in a year.
Did she give you a mocha test, or what did she give you?
Yeah, just the
And you
little
probably
mini
passed it.
handles and
I mean, what's
yeah,
what's what's interesting, what you're bringing up is, okay, you have kind of executive function problems, right? Like, so processing, something's going on with processing, right? But that's not what people can see, right? Because they're not seeing the lag time in your brain from when you're taking the information and then the
yeah,
outcome, right? So they're not you, but you can feel it. You can say, wait, this is just not right. I used to be switched on like this, and now
yeah,
it's a lot longer. So that is super interesting because most people wouldn't notice anyone's processing time is down, but you know yourself so well that you're saying, wait, there's really a problem here. And I mean, I'm assuming you could still get things done though, right? It's not like maybe your productivity was slower. Is that right to say? Or
slower. And I was starting to see things like um, medications. I knew my medications inside and out. I never had to look anything up. And now I was starting to go, oh, how do I mix that? Or, oh, how do I? But I always knew where to go to get the answer.
but
So,
that must have scared you because you're dealing
yeah,
with
because you're dealing in
yeah.
an ICU, quick, quick,
Yeah.
quick. You can't be, you know? So, um, so I saw her and she said, come back in a year.
Oh my
So
God.
there I sat another year and then we
Four
went back
years. 4 years.
4 years. Then she sent me for cognitive testing. And that's, and then I went back and saw her. And it was so funny because her and I carried on a conversation like you and I are. And the day I walked in to get the results, she did not look at me. She did not speak to me. She only spoke to my husband and said, your wife has young onset Alzheimer's and she's still doing fairly well. So bring her back when she can't dress herself. That was it. Didn't offer meds, didn't offer anything else.
That sadly, Phyllis, we hear that a lot,
All the time.
all
Yeah.
the time. And that direction, it's especially with women actually who say, all of a sudden I didn't exist and they started to talk to my husband, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, but wait, I'm here and I still understand what you're saying. It's like,
Well, I
so
was biting my tongue because I knew if I opened my mouth, what was going to come out wasn't going to be nice.
well, you were angry. Normal, naturally, anyone would be like, like today, if anyone started directing a conversation at my husband, I would get up and like want to punch that person. It just, and
Yeah,
now you've been diagnosed, and you are just the same person who walked in asking smart questions and able to hold a conversation, and suddenly you don't exist. So,
exactly.
so what do you do then?
I walked out of her office. As soon as I got out of the building, click, click, click. I called my neurologist's office and said, I need to see Dina and I need to see her now. And they said, come right up. So I went back up to the neurologist and I said, she didn't put me on meds. She didn't do this. She didn't do that. So she was very good and she put me on the meds immediately. And I said, I'll never see her again. Find me somebody else. And it took a while to get into the other person. She's one of the top people in Canada. But I reacted really poorly to the meds. And
What meds, may I ask, were you put on? Aricept?
yeah, so I had so many GI symptoms, I couldn't leave the house.
That happened to my mom too. Some people react terribly to Aricept in the like very nauseous. It made my mom extremely nauseous.
Yeah, so my appointment was coming up and I wanted to go on vacation, but I couldn't leave the house. So I thought, in ICU, we do a med vacation every now and again, take everybody off the meds. So I'm just going to quit my meds and then I'll go on vacation because I'm seeing this new specialist. So when I went and saw her, she was amazing. She redid all the testing and she said, I said, like, I couldn't take the meds. I was down to like 94 pounds.
Wow.
I couldn't leave the house. I said, so I quit them because I wanted to go away. And she said, no, that's fine. She says, has nobody given you the patch? And I went, there's a patch? So I switched to a patch form of medication, which worked great for years. And then, you know, what happened with my liver enzyme started to go out of whack. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take another vacation, let my liver recuperate. And I've noticed I'm not slipping anymore. I'm kind of holding my own. So I don't want to go back on meds until I start to decline again. But I also wonder, because I'm so involved and because I'm using different parts of my brain all the time and different aspects of research I'm working on and writing books and, all advocacy work, all the stuff I do, because it's activating so many areas of my brain, am I developing new neural pathways that are kind of holding me at a level where I'm not slipping?
Well, I think that's, I mean, we've heard that from other people as well, and it does tend to be the people who are engaged and continue to learn and,
Yeah.
socialize. I have a question though. How much do you know about your diagnosis? And what I mean about that is, have you ever had a PET scan or a blood test to confirm beta
So I was
lactam?
in studies that did PET scans, but I was never told the results because it was a study. I did do the genetic testing. I was told that the form I have is not genetic, even though there's the long family history. But that was all I was told. They would never really tell me anything more.
So you don't know for sure if you have amyloid plaque in your brain, but you've been given a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's.
Yes.
What type of studies were you in? Were you in any of the monoclonal antibody therapies that, like aducanumab, lecanemab? Do you know?
No, no. They were really big in the States. They weren't as big in Canada.
Right.
And now that it's available in Canada, that was one of the drugs my neurologist said, well, maybe we should put you on this. And I went, I'm holding my own. I'm not taking anything again until I have to, because I think in my own mind, I'm afraid that, if I start doing these drugs to hold me where I'm at and I'm holding my own, when I really need them, they're not going to be there. They're not going to work.
So tell me a little bit about, okay, so it's been how many years since diagnosis now?
Well, can I say I'm a senior citizen now?
Well, but
55. So
like 50 is like the new 20, or
yeah.
so what does
So
senior citizen say?
so 53, so 12 years firm diagnosis and 5 years before that with symptoms.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about how you feel you are. I mean, you obviously are with somebody with extreme self-awareness to have pursued a diagnosis when you had doctors telling you, no, it's okay, everything's fine, it's just menopause or whatever. So how do you feel today? And have you noticed a difference at all? Or how would you describe it? Are you holding steady? Are there times when you're
Yeah,
declining? Are you
I
getting
want
better?
to say I'm holding steady at this point in time, but I say I'm on a roller coaster with dementia because I have good days, I have bad days, I have ups, I have downs, I have twists and turns. Some days I'm right off the rails, right? So I think it depends on how I'm feeling that day. Did I get enough sleep last night? Because I don't sleep well. So that'll affect me. And I think what I do for myself, what I do a lot of the time is I will um, say I'm doing this. So I don't plan anything this morning before I do this so I can rest, I can be fresh when I come on to this. Where I start to notice, I start to run into difficulty is if I have 2 or 3 or 4 meetings a day and I don't have the break in between, then you'll start to notice. And you'll also notice as the day wears on and I start to get tired, this one side of my face starts to droop and my smile is off and, those types of things. And if I get sick, there's no, right? But being self aware, I can tell this is happening, you know, this is what I need to do, or, oh, I'm still driving.
Yeah.
So I'm having a bad day today. I shouldn't drive. So if
So
my
you tell
husband,
yourself that you don't,
oh yeah,
yeah,
you're
I'm
not
not gonna,
driving today,
yeah.
right? You're not with it enough. And so then get my husband to drive or call one of the kids to come and get me. Or
Can I ask you, what does a bad day look like?
there's days where I do not move. I'll get up, I'll come to the couch, and I'm done. I can't think. I cannot focus on anything. And, you know, Tom may say something to me and I just don't quite get what he's saying.
Have you ever been diagnosed with any comorbidities like diabetes or anything that we know is related to the brain?
No, I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. You know, I am, other than, and I've always said this, other than Alzheimer's, I am healthy as a horse. But I will tell you, I got COVID a year ago and I had long COVID, and now I have lung issues due to it.
Mhm.
And if my lungs are acting up, I don't think I'm oxygenating quite as well. And that's when I'll also see a decline. The other thing is if I get a bladder infection, I'm done.
It's so interesting that bladder infections, like they occur more so, I think, when people get older, but it has such a direct correlation to memory loss, right? I mean, cognition
And
just goes.
it's gone.
And a lot, and the hardest part is sometimes you just don't detect them, right? And so, I mean, a person can change considerably when you treat a bladder infection because it's just goes straight. There's something that goes
But
straight to the brain.
I will tell you, I have gone into a delirium with the bladder infection. And I had knew I was getting it, went to the doctors on a Friday morning and said, something's just not right. He didn't think I had enough to say, let's check your urine. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, I had full blown symptoms, went back to the walking clinic, got put on the antibiotics right away, but I still ended up with a full blown delirium. And you think, oh, you're on antibiotics, it's going to clear up. It doesn't clear up that quickly. And even after the antibiotics were done, I was really worried. I thought, oh my goodness, is this going to be my new norm? I can't live like this if it's my new norm. And it was really interesting. It took a good month for me to come back to a level where, oh, I can function.
You know, it's so interesting. And you brought up COVID as well and long COVID. And I remember my mom got COVID, and COVID for my mom was a totally different illness than it was
Mhm.
for anyone else. And I
Yeah.
didn't find this out until after she got COVID that, I mean, my mom, like within a day, could no longer walk. She just lost her coordination for walking, and she could no longer talk. And it happened like that. And, you know, I wrote about it in my newsletter, and then so many people wrote me back and said, you know, it was exactly the same for me or for my loved one. And there's something, and you know, there is a microbe theory that's being studied, unfortunately, not enough. But there is research out there about the direct impact of bacterial or viruses on the brain, right? And so, it does, like I always say this, COVID with in a lot of people with dementia looks a lot different than it does in people without it, right? And so
Yeah.
it's one thing we need to really keep in mind. We're getting a question from Michelle, and she says, what advice do you have for someone with a new diagnosis and for our healthcare system? I don't know which healthcare system you're in, Michelle. If you're in, obviously Phyllis is in Canada, so she can speak to Canada. So.
So I think my advice to somebody who's newly diagnosed is I'm going to skip the healthcare system at first, because I think my advice is stay engaged, stay social, stay active. If you're not one for exercising, start exercising, watch your diet, start eating properly, and that'll help you and yourself. And then what you need to do is for the healthcare system, and really, I don't care whether you're in the States, the US, Europe, wherever, really be conscious of yourself and what your wants and needs are, and really write it out and take your list with you. And to me, I will not give up until I get my answer. So really push for an answer. Don't let them kind of push you out the door.
Yeah, that's a really good, really great advice. I want to talk a little bit about your turn to advocacy and what that means for you. I know you've co-authored a book, which is amazing. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about, your life now and your purpose.
Well, right after I got my diagnosis and I was being treated so poorly, and I thought back to my mother and my grandmother, like they were both hidden away when, because that was like 90s and 60s when they were diagnosed, and people with Alzheimer's were hidden away. And I thought, I'm not hiding from anybody, right? And then I also thought things need to change. So I'm going to be the person who helps to change things in the world for others living with dementia, because I don't want them to go through what I went through. I want it to be easier. So I got involved with the Alzheimer's Society, just the local one in my local area, to help there and start to make change. And then, slowly I got more and more active and started to talk to the governments and stuff like that. And I was in with a group of friends that do disability work. And they were getting ready to go to talk at the United Nations on the Charter of Rights of People with Disabilities, because Canada was reporting on it. I went, I need to be there because dementia is not included and it needs to be. So they actually invited me along, and they really helped me put the stuff I wanted in that charter in there. And that really did make a difference here in Canada. That was the start of the change, because when the United Nations and the World Health wrote their letter back to Canada, they were given a mandate. And in the mandate, they had to change. So they sent it to the Senate of Canada, who held hearings, and we're sitting back and we're watching them talk to researchers, all the specialists, but they weren't talking to people living with dementia. So a group of us got together, wrote them a letter, and showed them the error of their ways. So we actually got invited to speak to the Senate, and that made a big difference. And out of that came our dementia strategy here in Canada. Now, as with anything else, every time there's a change in our government leadership, those things change. So you always have to stay on top of it. So in March, Canada is reporting again on its Charter of Rights of People with Disabilities. And again, I want to be there. So I got a whole group of companies, shall we say, who are backing me and helping me put all the stuff together again to go back.
That's wonderful. I mean, and you could tell you're a force, it's like a
I don't
force.
think so.
Well, it certainly seems that way. I mean, a book, and I love just really you wanting to highlight what it's like to live well with dementia, because there is such a thing. And I think you're living proof of that.
You know what? And yes, and with the book, it's really, I actually have it right here in my lap.
How to live well with dementia.
Yeah. It it was written by four of us. Dr. Anthea Innes, Megan O'Connor, and Carolyn Gohagan, and myself. And Carolyn is a care partner, myself, so that it's an honest book. We're answering questions from a personal perspective and letting people know in the world that this is what we went through and this is how we got through it and this is how you can get through it, right? So I think it's really important. Since it's come out, it made the #1 bestseller on Amazon. Usually books have to be out a year before it goes to audio. Ours has already gone to audio.
Amazing.
So that's, important for me, because a lot of people with dementia can't read anymore, but they can hear.
Yeah.
So to me, it was amazing that it went so quickly. A few of the professors I know that I work with right across Canada are now going to add it to their teaching. I'm like, yes,
That's amazing.
because it's going to help. It
So
can.
badly needed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Phyllis, thank you so much. You're an inspiration. Honestly, I say that 100% meaning it. Like just to see you, to talk to you, to look at what work you've done, it's truly amazing, and I'm sure it's so helpful to so many. So, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story.
No problem. Anytime.
And hold up your
Lovely.
book so people can see. Hold up your book.
And it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. How to Live Well with Dementia, and it's on Amazon. So anyone who's interested we can post a link to it too. So thank you so much. And to our audience, these interviews are amazing. It means so much to hear people's experiences like Phyllis's, to understand that life goes on even after a dementia diagnosis. So thank you, Phyllis.
Can I just say one last thing?
Sure.
We often hear people suffer with dementia. And I want to clarify that because, I don't think I suffer with dementia. I may be struggling with dementia, but I'm not suffering. I'm actually living well.
That is a beautiful way to end, and thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, 100%. So we wish you all the best and happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you.
Don't be a stranger. All right, take care. And if any of you want to know more about these interviews, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on beingpatient.com. This is when we'll tell you what's coming up, interviews like Phyllis, and also expert interviews to hear different perspectives. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.